Your daily struggles demand a different kind of armor. Marcus Aurelius once wrote that the task of life is to be like the promontory against which the waves continually break, yet it stands firm. This is the core of Stoicism, a philosophy forged not in quiet classrooms, but on the chaotic battlefields of the ancient world. We are going to uncover the exact mental and spiritual practices that warriors used to build unshakable resilience, razor-sharp focus, and a calm acceptance of their own mortality. These are not historical relics, but timeless tools for your own personal strength. By the end, you will possess a mental toolkit to face any modern challenge with a warrior's calm. How did they transform the fear of death into a powerful motivation for life? What single practice could help you stand firm when everything feels like it is falling apart? What does it truly mean to be courageous in a world filled with uncertainty? This foundational Stoic principle was the warrior's first line of defense. It is called the Dichotomy of Control, the radical mental act of sorting every single thing in your life into two distinct categories. On one side are the things within your absolute command, your own judgments, your intentions, your desires, and your reactions. On the other side lies everything else, the outcome of the battle, the actions of your enemies, even the fact of your own mortality. The philosopher Epictetus began his entire manual for life with this very idea, stating that some things are up to us and some things are not. For a soldier standing in a shield wall, this was not abstract philosophy. It was a survival technique. He could not control whether the enemy line would break or if the man next to him would hold his ground. He could not control the arrow flying towards him, but he could exert total control over his own grip on his shield, the precision of his thrust, and his disciplined breath amidst the roar of combat. By pouring all of his energy and focus solely into that small, manageable circle of control, he neutralized the paralyzing anxiety of the vast, uncontrollable chaos surrounding him. His mind became a still point in a turning world. So let me ask you a question. What one thing causing you stress right now is actually outside your control? The opinion of a difficult colleague, a delayed flight, a sudden change in plans. The Stoic practice is to consciously identify that external, to label it as such, and to deliberately release the mental effort you are wasting trying to command it. This is how you stop being a victim of circumstance and start becoming the author of your response. This deliberate mental rehearsal of disaster is known as Premeditatio Malorum, the premeditation of evils. It sounds grim, but its purpose is the exact opposite of despair. The Stoics did not practice this to wallow in fear. They did it to vaccinate the mind against the sting of future misfortune. By visualizing potential losses, setbacks, and even death itself, a warrior could drain those future events of their power to shock him when they arrived. The philosopher Seneca would write letters encouraging his friends to periodically anticipate poverty, exile, or illness. He argued that by mentally accepting these possibilities today, we ensure they cannot defeat us tomorrow. For the soldier on the eve of battle, this was a profound exercise in courage. He would not just picture victory, he would sit with the vivid possibility of a grave injury, the roar of the enemy breaking his line, the cold finality of his own death. He would feel the phantom fear, acknowledge it, and then practice his response, a response of calm acceptance and continued duty. In doing so, he built a powerful psychological immunity. When the chaos of battle actually unfolded, his mind had already been there. The terror was familiar and therefore manageable. His equanimity became his greatest weapon. Now translate this ancient drill into your own life. How could mentally preparing for a challenging conversation change your approach to it? If you visualize the discussion going poorly, If you accept that possibility fully beforehand, you strip the moment of its anxiety. You are no longer reacting from a place of raw, surprised emotion. You are responding from a place of prepared clarity, ready to engage with the actual situation, not the frightening story you built around it. This radical acceptance of fate finds its ultimate expression in a powerful Stoic command, Amor Fati, which means a love of one's fate. This is the final step, moving beyond simple acceptance to a genuine embrace of whatever life brings. It is the difference between tolerating a storm and learning to dance in the rain. For the ancient warrior, this was not a passive surrender to destiny. It was an active, fiery partnership with reality itself. He did not merely trudge toward his potential death in battle. He loved the opportunity to face it with courage, to fulfill the very purpose of his existence. His fate was not something to be endured, but something to be cherished as his own unique path. Marcus Aurelius captured this beautifully when he observed that a fig tree does its work by being a fig tree. A bee does its work by being a bee, and a human being does their work by fully and willingly accepting their nature and their circumstances. The warrior in the field understood this. He was not a farmer, he was a soldier. To wish for a peaceful life on a farm was to betray his own nature and his duty in that moment. His purpose was to stand his ground, and Amor Fati meant loving that station, that duty, with his entire heart. Picture a soldier who receives a significant wound. The passive mindset would see only a tragedy, a reason for despair and self-pity. But the warrior practicing Amor Fati sees the same wound as an integral part of his story. It is the mark of his service, the price of his loyalty, a testament to his resilience. He loves this scar, for it is proof that he lived his fate fully and did not run from it. This mindset transforms suffering into meaning. It forges a profound inner freedom, because when you love whatever happens, nothing can truly harm your spirit. So think back on your own life for a moment. Can you identify a recent difficulty, a setback you did not ask for, that in hindsight taught you something invaluable? Perhaps a job you lost that forced you to find a better path, or a relationship that ended, creating space for a deeper one to begin. Amor Fati is the practice of looking at that very event, not with resentment, but with a sense of gratitude for the strength it revealed in you or the door it ultimately opened. This sobering thought was a constant companion to the Stoic warrior, not a morbid obsession. Memento Mori, the practice of remembering you must die, served a profound and practical purpose. It acted as a mental whetstone, sharpening the mind's focus on what truly mattered. By keeping the reality of their finite time front and center, warriors could cut through the distractions of petty grievances, vanity, and fear. The philosopher Seneca captured this perfectly when he argued that life is long if you know how to use it. A short life, he suggested, is not one that ends early, but one that is wasted in indecision and trivial pursuits. For the soldier, this wisdom was a call to urgent and virtuous action. Picture a Roman legionary, his hand resting on the pommel of his gladius. Carved into that very hilt, or perhaps worn as an emblem on his armor, was a skull. This was not a symbol of despair, but a daily reminder. It whispered to him that today could be his last, so he must live and fight with complete purpose and integrity right now. It compelled him to resolve a quarrel with a comrade, to write a letter home expressing his love, to perform his duty with excellence, not tomorrow, but in this very moment. By making death a familiar thought, he stripped it of its terrifying, unknown quality. It became simply a part of life, a fact that gave his present actions immense weight and meaning. So let this practice turn inward for a moment. If you lived with a greater, more conscious awareness of your own mortality, what one thing would you finally stop procrastinating on? Would it be that difficult conversation you have been avoiding, the creative project you keep putting off, or simply the decision to be more present with the people you love? Memento Mori is not about fearing the end, but about honoring the preciousness of the time you have by choosing to live fully, right now. There is another mental exercise, one that could pull a soldier right out of the mud and blood of the battlefield and place him among the stars. The Stoics called this the view from above, a powerful act of mental reorientation designed to shatter the illusion that our immediate struggles are the center of the universe. A warrior feeling the crushing weight of an impending assault would consciously practice zooming out in his mind's eye. He would first picture himself not just as a man, but as a tiny figure on the landscape, then see that landscape as a mere speck on the sphere of the world. He would then pull his perspective further back, envisioning the earth itself as a small, silent globe drifting in the immense, dark silence of the cosmos. His personal fear, his individual life and death, were suddenly framed against an almost infinite backdrop. This was not meant to make his life seem meaningless, but to make his anxieties seem manageable. Marcus Aurelius was a master of this practice. In his private writings, he constantly reminded himself to look at things from above, to see the vastness of time and the countless generations that have come and gone. He would note how quickly the most celebrated names are forgotten, how even great empires crumble into dust. From this cosmic vantage point, his own political troubles, his physical pains, even the threats against his life, lost their overwhelming intensity. They were simply part of the eternal, flowing river of existence. You can apply this same perspective shift to the battles in your own life. When a problem feels all-consuming, try this simple modern parallel. Project yourself 10 years into the future and look back at your current situation. From that distant point of view, will that stressful work deadline, that social slight, or that financial worry still hold the same immense power over you? Most often, the answer is a clarifying no. The view from above shrinks personal drama down to its true size, allowing a profound and steadying calm to settle in. So when you feel the walls closing in, ask yourself this: how can I pull back the lens and see this struggle as just one small part of a much larger, ongoing story? The battlefield is a place where first impressions can be fatal. A sudden war cry from the forest, the unexpected breaking of your own line, the sight of an enemy champion. These events carry an immediate, visceral charge. Our instinct is to label them instantly as disaster, as terror, as certain doom. But the Stoic warrior cultivated a different reflex, a mental discipline called objective judgment. This is the practice of consciously stripping away the layer of emotional interpretation we automatically paint onto every event. It is the act of seeing what happens not as good or bad, but simply as a fact, a piece of information to be processed with calm reason. The philosopher Epictetus, a former slave who understood powerlessness intimately, gave us the core of this idea. He wrote that men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them. The event itself is neutral. It is the story we tell ourselves about the event that creates the storm of emotion inside us. Picture a legionary force ready to march, only to be met with a sudden, torrential downpour. The mud would cling to their sandals, their wool cloaks would become heavy and cold, visibility would drop. The untrained mind would scream catastrophe. This is a bad omen. The gods are against us, we are doomed. But the soldier practicing objective judgment would see only the facts. It is raining, the ground is soft. My equipment is heavier. These are the new conditions of the battle. His job was not to curse the storm, but to adapt to it, to recalculate his strategy based on this new, neutral reality. By refusing to label the rain as bad, he prevented his own mind from becoming another enemy he had to fight. His energy remained focused on solutions, not on despair. This mental shift is your most powerful tool for emotional regulation. Think of a recent event in your own life that you immediately judged as a setback. Perhaps a last-minute cancellation of plans you were eagerly anticipating. The initial judgment is disappointment, frustration, a ruined evening. But what are the objective facts? The event is not happening. You now have unscheduled time, that is all. From that neutral starting point, new possibilities emerge. You could use that quiet evening to finally read that book, or call a friend you have been meaning to catch up with, or simply rest. The event did not change, but your judgment of it did, and with it, your entire emotional experience. What is one situation from your past week that you branded as unfortunate, that you can now look upon as simply a set of circumstances? Another profound discipline was the deliberate embrace of hardship, a practice known as voluntary discomfort. While the other Stoic techniques focused on the mind, this one trained the body to be a willing ally to the spirit. Ancient warriors understood that a life of constant ease created a soft and brittle person, one who would shatter at the first true challenge. So they would intentionally seek out minor sufferings, exposing themselves to cold, hunger, or fatigue not as a punishment, but as a form of training. The Stoic teacher Musonius Rufus argued that practicing poverty is the only way to become truly rich in spirit. He believed that by willingly experiencing hardship, we prove to ourselves that these conditions are not evils to be feared, but merely temporary states we can endure with strength. Think of a Roman soldier, perhaps a young officer from a wealthy family, who deliberately chooses a simple meal of hard bread and water while his comrades enjoy a more lavish feast. He is not doing this because he must, but because he can. In that small act of denial, he is building a fortress within himself. He is learning that his comfort is not a necessity, but a preference. He is proving that his spirit is stronger than his stomach's desires. This voluntary discomfort immunized him against the whims of fortune. If a supply line was cut on campaign, he would not panic or despair. His body and mind were already familiar with scarcity. He had already faced that particular demon in a controlled setting and had emerged victorious. The hardship of the field held no surprises for him because he had invited a smaller version of it into his life long before. This practice cultivates a deep and lasting appreciation for the ordinary comforts we so often take for granted. That simple meal of bread and water makes the next proper feast taste infinitely more satisfying. A night spent sleeping on a thin mat makes your own bed feel like a haven. By periodically stepping away from comfort, you do not learn to hate it. You learn to cherish it without becoming its slave. Your happiness is no longer dependent on everything going perfectly. So what small, voluntary discomfort can you introduce into your own life this week? Could you take a cooler shower, skip a snack you routinely enjoy, or walk instead of driving a short distance? This is not about self-punishment, but about self-mastery. It is a small drill to remind you that you are far more resilient than your comfort zone would have you believe. Every warrior carried within him an unbreachable fortress, a final redoubt that no enemy could ever storm or conquer. This is the concept of the inner citadel, the Stoic belief that our truest, most essential self is a bastion of virtue and reason, built to withstand any external siege. While an army could strip a soldier of his weapons, his armor, and even his freedom, they could never lay a hand on this inner sanctuary. His character remained his own. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor who spent years on distant military campaigns, wrote that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. He understood that the true battle was always for the mind, and that by fortifying it with virtuous judgments, he created a self that was immune to the chaos of the outside world. Imagine a captured warrior standing in chains before a triumphant enemy commander. he has lost everything the world values: his sword, his standard, his liberty. Yet, if he has cultivated this inner citadel, he remains utterly undefeated. He meets his captor's gaze not with hatred or fear, but with a calm dignity. He cannot control his chains, but he can control his integrity. He chooses courage over complaint, acceptance over despair. In that moment, his defeat reveals a victory far greater than any battlefield triumph, the victory of a spirit that circumstances cannot break. This is the ultimate aim of all the Stoic practices, to construct this inner fortress brick by brick through daily discipline. So turn this question inward for a moment. What are the core values that form the unshakable foundation of your own inner citadel? Is it your honesty, your loyalty, your compassion, your sense of justice? Identify those principles, for they are the bedrock upon which you can build a life of unshakable resilience, a life where no external storm, no matter how fierce, can ever truly destroy you. This final Stoic practice might be the most challenging, yet it holds the key to a profound inner peace. Sympatheia is the deep recognition of our shared humanity and the interconnected nature of all existence. For the warrior on the field, this meant a radical shift in perspective. The enemy soldier charging toward him was not a faceless monster to be despised, but a fellow human being, a man acting from his own sense of duty, his own reasoning, and his own fears. He was simply another piece of the same universal whole, playing the part assigned to him. This understanding did not weaken the warrior's resolve to defend his own people. Instead, it transformed his motivation. He fought not from a place of blind rage or hatred, but from a place of solemn duty to the larger community he was sworn to protect. His actions were grounded in a higher purpose, freeing him from the corrosive poison of personal animosity. Marcus Aurelius captured this perfectly in his private meditations, writing that we are made for cooperation, like feet, like hands, like eyelids, like the rows of upper and lower teeth. To act against one another, he observed, is contrary to nature. Think of a Roman centurion standing over a defeated and captured enemy. The easy, instinctive path is vengeance, to see this person as less than human. But the warrior who has cultivated Sympatheia sees a father, a son, a man who believed in his own cause. Showing mercy in that moment is not a sign of weakness, but the ultimate expression of strength. It is a confirmation that his own humanity remains intact, that the battle has not broken his connection to the wider human family. This principle asks a difficult but essential question of you. How does seeing yourself as a single thread in a vast, interconnected tapestry change how you interact with others, even those you fundamentally disagree with? It challenges you to look past the surface conflict and recognize the shared human spirit beneath, to engage not with hatred, but with a firm and virtuous purpose. Between the first flash of an event and your reaction lies a critical space of choice. The Stoics called this the Discipline of Assent, the practice of pausing before you accept or reject any initial impression that enters your mind. For a warrior, this tiny gap between a sight and a judgment could mean the difference between life and death. It is the ultimate gatekeeper of a peaceful mind, the mental guard at the door who stops every panicked messenger and asks, is this report true? Epictetus, the former slave-turned-philosopher, dedicated his life to teaching this very skill. He insisted that we must not be swept away by the vividness of appearances. An impression is just that, an impression, not an order. It is a suggestion from the senses, and you hold the power to either endorse it with your belief or dismiss it with your reason. Imagine a scout returning to a Roman camp, his face pale as he reports a massive enemy force gathering just beyond the next hill. The initial impression is one of sheer terror. The mind instantly paints a picture of certain annihilation. The undisciplined soldier would feel that cold fear seize his heart, his hands might tremble, and the contagion of panic could spread through the entire unit. But the warrior trained in the discipline of assent catches that impression at the gate. He does not let it run rampant through the corridors of his mind. He holds it up to the light of his logic. Is the scout reliable? Has he been known to exaggerate before? Could the enemy be using decoys to create an illusion of greater strength? By subjecting the initial report to this rational scrutiny, he regains control. The impression loses its visceral power and becomes simply a piece of raw data to be analyzed. His calm deliberation in that moment becomes a shield for his entire company. Think back to your own life for a moment. When was the last time an initial impression of a situation turned out to be completely wrong? Perhaps you received a brief, terse email from a colleague and immediately assumed they were angry with you, only to discover later they were just rushed and stressed. Your initial impression, accepted without question, created a whole story of conflict and anxiety that never actually existed. The discipline of assent is your tool to challenge those automatic narratives. It is the conscious act of asking yourself, is this thought a fact, or is it merely my first, fear-filled interpretation of the facts? Every time you pause and question that initial charge of emotion, you are not just avoiding a mistake, you are fortifying the very walls of your inner citadel. A warrior's survival hinged on a razor's edge of attention, anchored entirely in the present moment. Amidst the chaos of clashing steel and roaring men, his mind could not afford to wander to the what-ifs of tomorrow or the regrets of yesterday. His entire world had to contract to the immediate task, the next parry, the next step, the next breath. This radical focus on the here and now is a cornerstone of Stoic practice, the only domain where your will can ever truly operate. Seneca put it perfectly when he observed that we are often more frightened than hurt, and that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. The soldier who lets his mind race ahead, picturing a fatal blow or a crushing defeat, has already lost the battle being fought in the present. He has abandoned the one place where his skill and courage can actually make a difference, but the disciplined warrior treats his attention like a precious resource. He pours all of it into the single, manageable action right in front of him. He is not fighting the entire war in that instant. He is simply blocking one sword thrust. He is not worrying about the enemy's next move. He is making his own. By narrowing his focus to this exact point in time, he finds a profound and functional calm. The overwhelming noise of the battle fades into the background, and his movements become efficient, precise, and powerful. So let this ancient discipline turn inward for a moment. What distraction can you set aside right now to be fully present in this moment? Is it the nagging worry about a future deadline that is stealing your focus from the work actually on your desk? Or is it the replay of an old argument that prevents you from truly hearing the person speaking to you now? The practice is simple, though not always easy. Gently but firmly guide your attention back from the stories your mind is spinning and anchor it in the raw reality of the present. Notice the feeling of your breath, the details of the room around you, the single task at hand. In doing so, you reclaim the only time you ever really have to act, to live, and to be free. This trust in a larger order was rooted in a profound Stoic conviction known as Providence. The ancient warriors believed the cosmos was not a chaotic accident, but a single, living, and rational entity they called the Logos. This divine reason was the intelligent force weaving every event, every setback, and every victory into a coherent and purposeful whole. For the soldier on the ground, this was not a vague spiritual idea. It was a practical lens through which to view the brutal randomness of war. He could face the chaos with an unshakable belief that everything, even the most painful and incomprehensible events, happened for a reason within this grand design. The early Stoic philosopher Cleanthes captured this devotional trust in his hymn to Zeus, praising the god as the one who guides the universal reason running through all things, and with whom humans can find harmony if they willingly follow. This belief system did not promise a happy ending, but it did promise a meaningful one. It transformed suffering from a pointless agony into a necessary thread in a vast, beautiful tapestry whose full pattern he could not see. Marcus Aurelius constantly returned to this theme in his private meditations, urging himself to accept everything that happens, even if it seems twisted, because it feeds the health and harmony of the universe. He saw nature as a flowing river, and to struggle against any event was to fight the current itself, a futile and exhausting endeavor. Imagine a cavalry commander whose horse suddenly stumbles and breaks a leg, forcing him to miss a crucial charge. The undisciplined mind would rage against the misfortune, seeing only a catastrophic twist of fate that ruined everything. But the warrior who trusted in Providence would take a deeper breath. He would accept this seemingly random disaster as part of the logos. Perhaps missing that charge spared him from riding into a hidden trap. Perhaps his presence was needed elsewhere on the field in a way he could not yet perceive. By releasing his struggle against the reality of the broken leg, he conserved his energy for the new situation, adapting with a calm and focused mind. His acceptance was not passivity. It was an intelligent cooperation with a reality far wiser than his own limited perspective. So how can trusting in a larger order, even without understanding its mechanics, bring you peace in your own turbulent times? When a project at work collapses unexpectedly or a personal plan falls apart, the immediate reaction is to fight the reality, to demand to know why this is happening to you. But the Stoic practice of providence invites you to take a step back and assume a hidden coherence. Trust that this setback, as painful as it is, might be redirecting you, strengthening you, or clearing space for something more aligned with your true path. This trust does not make you a passive observer of your life. It makes you a more agile and resilient participant, ready to play your part within a story whose ultimate meaning is far greater than any single chapter. This serene focus was the warrior's ultimate weapon, a state the Stoics called Apatheia. Do not mistake this for the cold indifference of modern apathy. Apatheia is a freedom from the destructive passions, a mind so clear and undisturbed it can make life or death decisions under the most extreme pressure. It is the calm eye of the hurricane, a place of profound inner stillness where reason, not raw emotion, holds the command. Seneca wrote powerfully on this in his work on anger, arguing that no plague has been more costly to the human race than rage. He described anger as a brief insanity, a temporary madness that seizes control and leads to actions we would never commit with a sober mind. For a warrior, this was not a philosophical abstraction. It was a tactical necessity. Picture a Roman general witnessing his battle line beginning to crumble under a ferocious enemy assault. The instinctual surge is blind panic, a hot rush of terror that screams for a frantic, disorganized retreat. But if he succumbs to that wave of passion, he guarantees the destruction of his entire army. Instead, the commander who has cultivated apatheia stands firm. His own calm becomes a living banner for his men. He assesses the breaking point with icy clarity, redirects his reserves not in a desperate gamble, but as a precise, calculated counter-thrust. His serene focus in that moment of chaos is more inspiring than any war cry. It tells every soldier that the situation is not lost, that a rational mind is still in command. This is the power of apatheia. It transforms panic into poise and chaos into ordered response. So turn this inward for a moment. What emotion most often clouds your own judgment in a crisis? Is it a flash of anger during a disagreement that makes you say things you later regret, or a creeping anxiety that paralyzes you from making any decision at all? The first step to cultivating your own apatheia is simply to observe that emotion without letting it take the wheel. Notice the heat in your chest, the tightness in your breath, and name it. This is anger, this is fear. In that simple act of recognition, you create a tiny space between the feeling and your reaction, a space where your reason can step in and reclaim command. What one step can you take this week to practice observing your most disruptive emotion without being ruled by it? The day's final duty for a Stoic warrior was not cleaning his sword or polishing his armor, but something far more demanding, a ruthless and honest audit of his own mind. Each night before sleep could claim him, he would sit in the quiet and subject his every action and reaction to a searching light. He asked himself 3 questions. Where did I go wrong? What did I do well? What could I do better? This practice of self-examination was the whetstone for his character, sharpening his virtue and grinding away his flaws. The philosopher Seneca wrote extensively about this nightly review in his letters, describing how he would interrogate his own soul. What evils have you cured today? What vices have you resisted? In what way are you better? For the warrior, this was not an exercise in self-criticism, but in strategic self-correction. Picture a legionary after his first true skirmish, his hands still trembling from the adrenaline. In the solitude of his tent, he replays the chaotic moments. He admits that when the enemy line first surged, a cold spike of fear made him hesitate for a single, crucial second. He labels that failure of nerve with stark honesty. Where did I go wrong? But he also recalls how, after that initial freeze, he remembered his training, locked his shield with the man beside him, and held the line. That is what he did well. And from this clear-eyed assessment, the path forward emerges. Tomorrow, he resolves, I will focus on my breath in that first moment of contact, using it to anchor my courage before the fight begins. That is how he will do better. This relentless focus on incremental improvement transformed every single day, even a day of fear and struggle, into a stepping stone toward unshakable strength. So turn this ancient mirror on your own life. What would a truly honest review of your last 24 hours reveal about your character? Would it show patience in a moment of frustration or a flash of anger you now regret? Would it highlight an act of quiet integrity or a compromise you wish you had avoided? The goal is not to punish yourself, but to perceive your own patterns with the clarity of a strategist, identifying exactly where to deploy your forces tomorrow in the ongoing campaign to become the person you are meant to be. Every obstacle you face contains the very energy needed to overcome it. This is the core of the ancient Stoic principle that the obstacle is the way. For the warrior, a blocked road was not a signal to stop, but a call to innovate. A delay in battle was not wasted time, but a chance to fortify discipline. A significant injury was not the end of a career, but the beginning of a deeper lesson in patience. Adversity was not a barrier standing between them and their goal. It became the path itself, the raw material for forging a stronger spirit. Marcus Aurelius captured this alchemical idea perfectly in his private writings, observing that our actions may be impeded, but there can be no impeding our intentions or our dispositions. He noted how a fire makes power out of everything thrown into it, how a small lamp is not extinguished by the surrounding darkness, but is instead fed by its own oil. The warrior learned to be that fire, to be that lamp. Imagine a scouting party returning to report that the only pass through the mountains has been blocked by a landslide. The easy reaction is frustration and despair, seeing the entire campaign doomed by this single event. but the commander who understands that the obstacle is the way sees a different reality. The blocked path is now his teacher. It forces him to practice the virtue of creativity, to study the maps for a forgotten trail. It demands the virtue of patience from his restless men as they undertake a longer, more arduous march. It even offers the unexpected gift of surprise, for the enemy, confident in their landslide, will be unprepared for an attack from an unexpected direction. The obstacle did not weaken him, it trained him. So take a moment and identify one current obstacle in your own life. Is it a difficult project at work, a strained relationship, or a personal limitation? Now ask yourself this crucial question: how can this very challenge be used to strengthen a virtue you wish to cultivate? That frustration could be the fuel for practicing patience. That confusion could be the gym where you build your creativity. The obstacle is not in your way, it is the way. That judgment, the quiet internal decision that something else matters more than fear, is the very heart of Stoic courage. It is not a magical absence of dread, but a profound act of prioritization. For the ancient warrior, that something else was a triad of unshakable commitments: his duty to his nation, the honor of his name, and the lives of the comrades standing beside him in the line. Courage in this light is simply action in accordance with virtue, even when every instinct screams for retreat. The Roman statesman Cicero, in his work on duties, defined true courage not by the absence of anxiety, but by its purpose. He wrote that the courage which is most praised is that which deliberately faces the greatest dangers for the sake of the common good. This frames courage not as a personal thrill, but as a social responsibility. Now picture a young soldier, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird as the enemy cavalry thunders toward his position. The fear is real, a biological imperative to run and survive. But then his gaze shifts to the man on his left, a friend from his village, and to the man on his right, a veteran he has sworn to protect. His duty to that small, sacred unit becomes more important than the primal fear coursing through him. He makes the judgment, a conscious choice, to lock his shield and stand his ground. That is Stoic courage in its purest form, action taken in spite of emotional resistance, because a higher good demands it. So turn this inward and reflect on your own life. When was a time you acted with courage, not because you felt brave, but simply because it was the right thing to do? Perhaps it was speaking up for a colleague when it was easier to stay silent, or finally setting a difficult but necessary boundary with a loved one. In that moment, you were not fearless, you were virtuous, and that is the only kind of courage that truly matters. The battlefield is not a place for personal ambition, but for a quiet and total dedication to duty. This unwavering commitment to one's role was the bedrock of the Stoic warrior's purpose. They found profound meaning not in seeking glory, but in perfectly fulfilling their assigned part in the grand play of existence, no matter how large or small that part might be. The former slave and philosopher Epictetus used a powerful metaphor to explain this. He said, "We are all like actors in a play, and the author of that play chooses our roles. One person is cast as a beggar, another as a lame man, a third as a ruler or a common citizen. Our job is not to complain about the part we are given, but to act it out to the very best of our ability, with all the skill and virtue we can muster." For the soldier, this meant a radical acceptance of his station. He was not a farmer, a merchant, or a senator. His sacred duty was to be the best warrior possible, for in doing so, he upheld the entire structure of his society and contributed his unique thread to the cosmic order. Picture a Roman centurion, the grizzled backbone of the legion. His role was not defined by a single heroic charge, but by 1,000 small, meticulous acts of care. He would spend hours inspecting the leather straps on his men's armor, ensuring a single faulty tie would not cost a life. He would memorize the names and faces of every soldier under his command, knowing that their trust in his leadership was as crucial as their skill with a sword. He would drill his century relentlessly, not out of cruelty, but from a deep sense of responsibility for their collective survival. In these seemingly mundane tasks, he was not just maintaining equipment or training troops, he was performing a sacred ritual. He was honoring his role, so let this ancient concept turn inward for a moment. How would your own approach to your daily responsibilities change if you saw them not as chores or obligations, but as a sacred duty? Whether you are a parent ensuring a child feels safe, a worker crafting a product with integrity, or a friend offering a listening ear, your role is essential to the health of your own small world. Embracing it with that level of purpose transforms ordinary tasks into acts of meaning, infusing even the most routine day with a sense of cosmic significance. A warrior's freedom was not found in the number of his victories, but in the strict governance of his own mind. This next discipline strikes at the root of our greatest struggles, the constant pull of wanting and the powerful push of fear. The Stoics called this the management of desire and aversion, and for a soldier, it was the ultimate path to inner liberation. They trained relentlessly to limit their desires, like a craving for an easy victory or the intoxicating lure of personal glory, and to soften their deepest aversions, such as the dread of pain or the terror of death. They understood that a man chained by his wants and fears is a prisoner, regardless of his physical circumstances. His true enemy was not the opposing army, but the internal tyrant of unchecked passion. The philosopher Epictetus began his entire manual for life, the Enchiridion, with this radical idea. He stated that freedom is secured not by fulfilling your desires, but by destroying them. This is not a call to a joyless existence, but an invitation to a more profound peace. It means transferring your investment from the unpredictable external outcome to the one thing you can always command, your own moral choice in the present moment. Picture a young hoplite in the Greek phalanx. He cannot desire a specific outcome, like his side winning without a single casualty, for that is outside his control. If he clings to that desire, he sets himself up for agony and despair if the battle turns against him. Instead, he pares his desire down to its essential core. His only true goal is to act with honor, to hold his position, to protect the man beside him. This singular, manageable desire is entirely within his power to fulfill, regardless of the final result. He is free because his sense of worth and purpose is no longer hostage to fortune's whims. His satisfaction comes from knowing he did his part with virtue, win or lose. So let this powerful idea turn inward for you today. What is one desire you can soften to reduce your potential for disappointment? Is it the craving for a specific promotion, an attachment to a particular plan unfolding exactly as you envisioned, or the need for someone to behave in a certain way? By loosening your grip on that external demand, you are not giving up, you are claiming your freedom. You are choosing to find your fulfillment in the quality of your own efforts, a territory you rule completely. A commander's silence on the eve of battle could be more powerful than any war cry. In a world saturated with noise and opinion, the Stoic warrior understood that purposeful silence was a fortress for the mind and a tool for discernment. They practiced a rigorous restraint of speech, viewing careless words, gossip, and complaint not as harmless chatter, but as leaks in their spiritual reservoir, draining the vital energy needed for focus and resolve. The philosopher Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, put it perfectly when he observed that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. This was not a call to muteness, but a discipline of ensuring that every word that passed their lips was necessary, measured, and true. Imagine a seasoned general holding a war council with his junior officers. The room is thick with tension and competing suggestions, each man eager to prove his own strategic brilliance. But the general remains largely quiet, his eyes moving from face to face, absorbing not just the words being spoken but the subtle hesitations and unspoken fears behind them. His silence is not indecision, it is intense, active listening. He is gathering the most crucial intelligence of all, the state of his own commanders' hearts and minds. When he finally does speak, his words are few, clear, and decisive, cutting through the noise to deliver an order that carries the weight of considered judgment. His men trust that command implicitly because it was born not from reactive emotion, but from a deep well of calm observation. This practice cultivates a profound inner peace, as you are no longer expending mental effort on crafting every immediate opinion or defending your own ego. Externally, it builds unshakable trust because people learn that when you speak, your words have substance, so reflect on your own conversations. In your next discussion, whether with a partner, a colleague, or a friend, what hidden truths, what unspoken needs could you discover by consciously choosing to listen more and speak less? A mortal wound on the battlefield was not a signal for despair, but for the ultimate test of a lifetime's practice. This final discipline, accepting the inevitable with unshaken dignity, was the warrior's last act of will. It was Amor Fati made absolute, a full and conscious embrace of the natural conclusion to every life. When all avenues of control had vanished, the only thing left to command was the manner of his exit. The Roman historian Tacitus provides a stunning example in his account of Seneca's death. Forced to take his own life by the Emperor Nero, Seneca met his end not with frantic pleas or theatrical grief, but with a calm and reasoned grace. As his lifeblood flowed, he comforted his weeping friends, reminding them of the lessons of philosophy and the strength they had cultivated together. His final moments were not about him, but about reinforcing the virtue in those he left behind. Now picture that same spirit in a common soldier, his body broken beyond repair. He feels the cold spreading from his limbs, the sounds of battle growing distant. He could curse the gods, weep for his family, or drown in self-pity. Instead, he uses his fading breath to offer a strained but steady word of encouragement to the young recruit kneeling beside him. He might say, "Hold the line," or simply, "Be brave." In that single, selfless act, he transforms a personal tragedy into a final gift of strength for his comrades. He demonstrates that a good death is not defined by the absence of pain, but by the presence of character until the very last second. So let this question settle deeply within you. If you were to face an unavoidable end, what would you want your final attitude to demonstrate about the person you chose to become? Would it be one of resistance and complaint, or one of acceptance and peace, a final, quiet proof of a spirit that circumstances could never truly break? This idealized figure of perfect wisdom was the sage, a mental model of flawless reason and virtue that every warrior carried within. While no mortal could ever fully become this ideal, the constant act of striving toward it was the entire point of the practice. The sage represented an unshakable standard, a compass pointing true north in the moral chaos of war and life. Later Stoics looked to figures like Cato the Younger as a man who came remarkably close to this ideal, a senator who chose to take his own life rather than live under the tyranny of Julius Caesar, embodying his principles to the very last breath. For a soldier in the thick of combat, this was not an abstract philosophical concept. It was a practical mental switch he could flip in an instant. Amidst the roar and confusion, he could pause for a single heartbeat and ask himself one clarifying question. What would a wise person do right now? This question instantly cut through the fog of fear, rage, or desperation, redirecting his focus from his swirling emotions to a standard of principled action. It was not about what he felt like doing, but about what virtue demanded. This internal dialogue transformed his decision-making. The impulse to chase a fleeing enemy for personal glory is tempered by the sage's wisdom, reminding him that breaking formation could jeopardize the entire army. The desire to lash out at a cowardly comrade is checked by the sage's compassion, understanding that fear is a universal human experience. By measuring his impulses against this impossible ideal, he consistently pulled his own character to a higher ground. So turn this question inward and make it personal. Who in your life, whether someone you know personally or a historical figure you study, embodies the qualities of a sage that you most admire? Is it a grandparent whose patience seems endless, a leader known for their unwavering integrity, or a thinker whose clarity cuts through confusion? Identify that person and their core virtues. Then, in your own moments of challenge, begin to ask their version of the warrior's question. What would they do in this situation? This simple act installs a moral compass in your mind, guiding you not by rigid rules, but by the living example of the character you aspire to become. The soldier's march was a meditation in motion. Each grueling step across uneven terrain, every ache in a muscle pushed to its limit, was not mere physical punishment. It was the deliberate integration of mind and body, a core Stoic practice where physical endurance forged unbreakable mental resolve. The philosopher Musonius Rufus argued that physical labor was not beneath a thinker, but essential to one. He believed that hard work, from digging a field to carrying a heavy load, trained the body to be a willing servant to the soul, building a strength that was as much about character as it was about muscle. For the legionary on a 30-mile march under the weight of his pack, this philosophy was his reality. His focus was not on the distant horizon, but on the next single step. He learned to observe the pain and fatigue without being commanded by them, to separate the raw sensation in his legs from any judgment of suffering. In this relentless, rhythmic effort, he was building more than stamina. He was building the very architecture of perseverance, the mental muscle to continue when every instinct begged for rest. This transforms our modern view of exercise entirely. How can you approach your next physical challenge as an opportunity to strengthen your mind as well as your body? Whether it is a demanding run, a heavy set at the gym, or simply choosing the stairs, see it not as a chore but as a drill. In that moment of wanting to stop, you have a choice. Surrender to the discomfort or breathe through it and take one more step. Each time you choose to continue, you are not just building a stronger body. You are laying another brick in your inner citadel. A warrior's freedom expanded with every possession he could live without. This radical self-sufficiency was not about deprivation, but about discovering a profound abundance in simplicity. For the soldier on campaign, needing very little was a tactical advantage. He was not mentally chained to the long, vulnerable supply trains stretching back to Rome, nor was his spirit weighed down by an attachment to soft beds or rich foods. His contentment was portable, internal, and utterly unassailable. This made him resilient and wildly adaptable, ready to march, fight, or endure with a mind clear of material worries. The philosopher Epictetus, who knew the sting of poverty firsthand, put it with stunning clarity. He said that if you want to make a man happy, do not add to his possessions, but take away his desires. For him, the foundation of a good life was as simple as a little water and a barley cake. Now picture a legionary at the end of a grueling day's march. His body is tired, his tunic is dusty, but he sits by a small fire with his comrades. In his hands is a simple meal of hard bread, a bit of cheese, and a cup of water. He is not staring longingly at some imagined feast back in the city. He finds a deep, genuine satisfaction in this basic nourishment, in the warmth of the flames, and in the vast star-filled sky above his head. His happiness is not conditional on his external circumstances. It is built into his very way of seeing the world. This is the art of contentment with little, a practice that declutters the soul. So turn this question over in your own mind. What is one possession you own, one comfort you rely on, that you could intentionally do without, even for a short while, and in doing so, actually lighten your mental load? Gratitude was the warrior's daily armor against resentment. This was not a passive feeling, but an active discipline, a deliberate reordering of perception to see the world as a gift, even in the midst of hardship. While a soldier might face a day of grueling marches or the terror of battle, he was taught to begin that very day with a conscious acknowledgement of what was good. He gave thanks for the strength in his limbs that allowed him to carry his shield, for the loyalty of the comrades who stood shoulder to shoulder with him, and even for the harsh training that had forged his resilience. This practice systematically dismantled the seeds of self-pity and bitterness before they could take root. Marcus Aurelius himself began his private meditations with this exact exercise, listing the things he was grateful for, from the character of his grandfather to the fact that he had not wasted his life on rhetoric and poetry. He trained himself to see the virtue in everyone, even those who wronged him, because they provided an opportunity to practice patience and forgiveness. Picture a legionary at dawn, the camp slowly stirring around him. Before pulling on his armor, he spends a few quiet moments. He does not dread the coming struggle. Instead, he feels a genuine thanks for the breath in his lungs, for the worn sword that has served him well, for the simple meal that will fuel his body. This mental ritual sets his entire orientation for the day. It ensures that his spirit enters the fray fortified, not with rage, but with a profound appreciation for the life he has been given to live and the duty he has been given to fulfill. So take this ancient practice into your own morning. For what 3 simple things that you usually take for granted can you feel genuine gratitude today? Is it the warmth of your bed, the clean water from your tap, or the quiet moment before the day truly begins? Stoic excellence is carved over time through the steady rhythm of daily habit. A warrior's strength was not born in a single moment of heroism, but in the quiet accumulation of disciplined mornings, the repetitive drills under the sun, and the nightly review of his own conduct. His entire life was a carefully constructed architecture of routine, designed to engrave the right responses so deeply into his being that when chaos erupted, virtue emerged without thought. Practice, as Seneca observed, is the key. He wrote that fortune does not seize the unprepared, but favors the mind that has been trained by habit. For the Roman legionary, this was a matter of life and death. His training was not occasional, it was relentless. He would practice forming the testudo, the tortoise formation, with his comrades hundreds of times, until the movement of his shield was an extension of his own arm. He would drill with a heavy wooden sword against a post until his thrust was perfect, not just once but 10,000 times. This was not mindless repetition. It was the conscious sculpting of his own character, forging a will of iron through the fire of daily discipline. These rituals made his courage automatic, his resilience instinctual. So the question for you is this: what one small, positive habit can you commit to daily to build your character over the long term? It does not need to be monumental. It could be 5 minutes of quiet reflection each morning, a single act of kindness, or consistently finishing one task you promised yourself you would do. The power is not in the scale of the action, but in the unwavering consistency of its performance. This is how you build your own inner legion, one disciplined day at a time. Your character is the only territory you can never afford to lose. The Stoics held a radical and demanding belief that the only true good in this life is virtue, your wisdom, your justice, your courage, and your moderation. Conversely, the only true evil is vice, the corruption of your moral character. Everything else, from wealth and reputation to poverty, pain, and even death itself, they classified as indifference. These things were not inherently good or bad, but merely materials for virtue to act upon. For a warrior, this philosophy completely redefined the nature of the battlefield. His mission was no longer simply to kill the enemy and survive. His highest purpose was to emerge from the chaos with his integrity intact, to prove his virtue under the most extreme pressure imaginable. The enemy could take his life, but they could never take his honor unless he surrendered it himself. The philosopher Epictetus drew a line in the sand with his famous distinction. He said that a broken leg is not a disgrace, but a broken moral character is. A physical injury is an external event, an indifferent, it happens to you. But a failure of courage, a betrayal of your comrades, a descent into cruelty, these are internal choices that happen because of you. They stain the soul. This is why a Stoic warrior would fear acting like a coward infinitely more than he feared dying. Death was a possibility. Dishonor was a certainty if he broke his principles. Imagine a soldier in the thick of a desperate fight. He sees a chance to save his own life by abandoning his position, leaving his friends to be overwhelmed. The instinct for self-preservation screams at him to run, but if he truly believes that his character is his only true possession, then running would be the real defeat. He would be choosing the ultimate evil, moral failure, over a mere indifferent, the end of his physical life. His standing ground, then, is not a suicidal impulse, but the highest form of self-interest, a defense of the only thing that truly matters. So let this question settle deeply within you. If you truly believed that your character was the only thing of ultimate value, how would your daily priorities shift? Would you still sacrifice your integrity to win an argument or to gain a temporary advantage? The battles you face may not be fought with swords, but the principle is the same. Every time you choose honesty over deceit or courage over comfort, you are holding the one piece of ground that is eternally yours. A true victory was measured not by the cheers of the crowd, but by the quiet in the warrior's own mind. This is the practice of equanimity, the Stoic art of holding an even keel through both triumph and disaster. For the ancient warrior, his sense of worth could never be anchored in the fickle winds of outcome, which were always beyond his final control. His value was rooted in the one thing he truly commanded, the integrity of his effort, the courage of his attempt, the virtue he displayed in the struggle itself. A win did not make him a better man, just as a loss did not diminish his core character. This inner stability was his ultimate shield against the whiplash of fortune. Seneca captured this perfectly, reminding us that what fortune has given, she can also take away. Her gifts are loans, not possessions. The general riding in a grand triumph through the streets of Rome, hailed as a hero by thousands, would consciously wear his laurels with the same detached calm as he would a common tunic. Inside, he knew the victory was the result of countless factors, many of them pure chance. He accepted the honor with gratitude, but without letting it inflate his ego, understanding that the same crowds could just as easily turn on him tomorrow. His self-worth remained untouched, a treasure no mob could give or take away. Now, turn this lens onto your own life. Can you recall a recent success or failure that sent your emotions on a dramatic roller coaster? Perhaps a promotion that made you feel invincible for a week, or a project that fell apart and left you feeling like a complete failure. What would true equanimity in that situation have looked like? It would have meant feeling the natural joy of the promotion without letting it define you, and acknowledging the pain of the setback without letting it break you. Your inner calm would have remained a steady flame undisturbed by the changing weather outside. Even the memory of the dead is soon extinguished in the endless river of time. This stark realization, voiced by Marcus Aurelius, did not lead the Stoic warrior to despair, but to a profound shift in motivation. His actions on the battlefield were guided by a long-view practice, the desire to leave behind a virtuous legacy. He fought not merely for immediate survival, but to conduct himself in a way that would be remembered as honorable and just, contributing to the good of his community long after his own name was forgotten. This perspective transformed sacrifice from a tragic loss into a meaningful offering for a future he would never see. A soldier defending a village was not just holding a line of dirt, he was protecting the laughter of children who would grow up in safety, the traditions of his people, the very continuity of a world he held dear. His courage in that moment became a gift planted in the soil of time, intended to bear fruit for generations he would never meet. This is the ultimate application of Stoic virtue, acting for the benefit of the whole, even when no personal reward remains. So let this question settle deeply within you. If your story were to be distilled into one single, defining quality, what virtue do you hope would form the core of how people remember you long after you are gone? These ancient practices form a single, unbreakable chain of resilience. You begin by mastering what you can control, your judgments and your actions, and in doing so, you build an inner fortress no external storm can breach. You then inoculate your mind against future hardship by mentally preparing for it, and you find ultimate freedom by embracing your fate, including the finality of your own life. This is not a dusty philosophy for a bygone era. It is a living toolkit for the battles you face every single day, from the stress of a crowded inbox to the deeper anxieties of an uncertain world. Your power lies in applying these timeless principles right now. The philosopher Epictetus offered perhaps the clearest summary of this entire path when he taught that freedom is not achieved by satisfying desire, but by destroying it. And happiness is not about getting what you want, but in wanting what you get by aligning your will with the nature of the world. This week, do not try to master them all. Choose just one. Perhaps it is the discipline of pausing before you react, or the practice of finding gratitude in a simple moment, or the courage to embrace a single difficulty as your path. Your journey toward an unshakable spirit begins with that single, deliberate choice. We would love to hear which Stoic principle resonated most deeply with you. Share your chosen practice in the comments below, and let us build a community strengthening each other, one virtuous step at a time.